Hi Josh, when are you riding your new Madone? Where is the Madone? How is the Trek Madone going? You don't seem to ride it at all. Whatever happened with the Madone? What happened to the fancy Madone? Still waiting for Madone? Where is the Madone? Confirm Madone washed, Emonda forever. Certified dog on the bike.
Hello guys and welcome to the video. Yes, this video is finally here, the Madone review that I promised a long time ago. I've been adequately harassed online. Where's the Madone? When am I making this video? So here it is. So, sorry it's taking me a bit of time. I went on a side quest doing 3 peaks for a bit. I rode my Emonda a lot and I had some issues just getting comfortable on this bike, which I'll talk about later. But I've ridden the bike now for over 1,000 kilometers. I really wanted to ride the bike like a proper amount to really crystallize my thoughts on this bike, how it feels, how it rides. I didn't want to make a video like off the cuff without giving it a proper go. So yeah, now that I've done over 1,000 kilometers, I'm happy to make this video. Oh, I almost stacked it. Man, there's so many planes. Every time I'm recording, a plane goes over. And the format of this video is going to be first things first. I'm going to go through all the components on the bike, what I think about them, are they good? The next thing I'm going to talk about is how the bike handles. Is it aero? Does it feel good to ride? And the last thing, I know people want this again, but I'm going to talk a bit more about how it compares to the Trek Emonda and just my final kind of thoughts on this bike. But before we start,
hello. I'm talking to you from the rolling green hills of Scotland, the natural habitat of the West Highland White Terrier. Why am I doing this? For no reason other than use this green screen effect that I really wanted to show off. Cycling can be a bit of an expensive sport, so that's why anytime I'm looking to buy accessories or little things that are expendable, I will go on AliExpress. Some things I've been buying from there recently is my Ride Now inner tubes. These are only about $5 to $8, and because you go through a couple of them every couple of weeks, it can be a much more budget option than buying some more expensive tubes. Some other things that I've gotten is this Garmin case with these cute little ears that you'll see in plenty of my videos. And finally, the thing that I've been most impressed by recently is actually my cassette. Durace cassette goes for as much as $400, and this one I bought off AliExpress is lighter than a Durace cassette, is machined metal, and only cost me about 150 bucks. Now, you thought the savings were good, but they're actually better. It's AliExpress's 15-year anniversary right now, so they're running a special promotion. There's up to 80% savings, and there's actually additional savings on top of that. If you click on my link in the description or this QR code on the screen right now, you can join my team. Once you join a team, there's an immediate 5% discount, but as you spend money, we accumulate points, unlocking additional tiers of discounts. These will be given back as a cashback on the AliExpress app. But wait, there is more. I cannot believe it. There's got everything you could possibly need for your ADHD brain. There are mini games that you can play inside the AliExpress app. This is called Play Prize Land, and you could win a share of 170,000 Australian dollars. Why don't you go out there, treat yourself, maybe buy some more inner tubes, join my team, and let's all save some money together.
okay guys, super quick bike check. I'm gonna go from the front to the back of the bike. I'm gonna tell you everything that's on this and my quick thoughts on it. We'll make it quick. So sorry it's very dirty. This is a Trek Madone SLR7. So SLR means it's a top of the line frame set. This is the lightest Trek Madone frame set they make. It comes with Tram Force. I don't believe it's called ETAP anymore, but it's the electronic group set. And on the front end here, we've got the Bontrager one-piece handlebars, 38 on the top, 40 in the drops. This is a new style where they taper the handlebars, and I have to say I actually really enjoy it. You just get a little bit more extra leverage when you're in the drops. Feels really nice. And if I had the option to go to this on my bike, I probably would if I could. But they just don't make tapered drops on the current handlebars I use on my Emonda. So next up, we've got the Bontrager Alias Pro 51 wheels. These wheels, look, they're good for what they are. They're good depth. I think 50 millimeters is a good depth. They're not the lightest though. I definitely say if you're looking to upgrade something on the bike, the wheels is probably gonna be the first thing. But look, they're adequate. They do a good job and they feel really nice. The tires it comes with, this is when you get a Trek bike, you can choose between their Bontrager tires and these Pirelli P0s. I would definitely go the Pirellis. I don't think the Bontrager tires are that great, so I'm glad to have these. I usually use GP5000s that have been very happy with these as they're set up tubeless, which is quite nice. I'm not usually a tubeless person. Moving on through the bike. The bike came with a Bontrager saddle, which I found very uncomfortable, and I've actually swapped it for the Cell Italia SLR. This is one of the reasons why it took me so long to get on this bike, was because I couldn't get comfy. The Bontrager saddle is a bit too wide for me, and I had to go out and buy my own saddle to put on here. This is essentially the same saddle I run on my Emonda, so I knew I'd be comfy with it. Next up, we've got the water bottles, or the water bottle cages. So one of the innovations they made for this bike was having the aero bottle cages and the aero bottles, and I have to say, I'm not a fan of those aero bottles. I think there's a few design flaws on them which are really not that good. Now the good thing is though, they've engineered it that you can just use normal water bottles in these aero bottle cages. So they have made a problem, but they've also made the solution. So can't fault them too much on that. Next up, we've got a power meter here on the SRAM crank. Really love that, that's fantastic. SRAM, I'm not used to using it, but it's quite intuitive and I did pick it up quickly. 4835 on the front. I'm sorry, I can't tell you what's on the back because I don't know. But look, it's a really good group set. It shifts really well. Not the best when it's cross-chained, like I have had a chain drop or two when it's cross-chained. That's about it for what's on the bike. And the last thing I guess that everyone wants to talk about is the ISO flow, this little gap here they've got in the back. Supposedly more aerodynamic, impossible for me to tell you unless I have a wind tunnel. Now the ISO flow, I believe there's two reasons for it. One is aerodynamics, and the second is to allow a bit of compliance in the seat post. And I'm not sure about aerodynamics because I don't have a wind tunnel, so I can't tell you how well that performs. But in terms of compliance in the seat post, I think it actually is not a gimmick. It does a pretty good job. It allows a little bit of vibration and movement, which you usually wouldn't want. But when I'm riding and I'm riding over some rough surfaces, I can actually really tell that it absorbs some of that. And I'll show you some footage now on the screen that shows that as I'm riding on some really rough terrain. I'm riding this bike one-handed on gravel to show you how the ISO flow works to absorb vibrations. And I'm really nervous right now because it's getting dark and this is really hard riding with one hand on gravel.
First of all, I'd like to clear up some misconceptions about this bike. I actually don't own this bike. This has been loaned to me from Trek. I've had it for a couple of months and they're being very generous in letting me just borrow it for however long I want. With that being said, I do need to give it back to them at some point, and I probably will give it back to them after this review. But it's been a great experience getting to ride this bike, especially since there's been so much controversy on its arrival. To give you a brief summary, this bike combines the Emonda and the Trek Madone Gen 7. And the Trek marketing team were definitely in a bit of a tight spot. They had advertised this bike as being as light as an Emonda and as fast as the previous Madone, i.e. the perfect all-rounder bike. But when you kill off one of cycling's most beloved bikes and you also make big claims about aerodynamics, you're definitely going to come under scrutiny, and this is something that happened on the Nero show as well as through other bike tests. But anyway, I'm not here to talk to you guys about that. I'm here to talk to you about how this bike feels to ride, did I enjoy it, and some of the little quirks about this bike that I noticed after riding it for 1,000 kilometers. Over the past 1,000 kilometers, I've definitely put this bike through all the paces. I've done the fast chop rides, I've done long weekend rides, and I've done some solo, almost TT style efforts. From the perspective of handling, I think Trek have actually done a fantastic job with the setup and geometry of this bike so that the handling is really, really good. I hate myself for saying all these buzzwords, but it is honestly how I feel. The bike feels quite planted when descending, it feels really good around corners. And with a slightly longer rake on the front end, it actually feels a bit more stable at those higher speeds. Power transfer also feels fantastic. This is due to the smaller rear triangle on the rear end, also in thanks to the ISO speed, which actually forces that seat stay a little bit lower. With the most noticeable thing to me was that stiffness when you're out of the saddle and you're really trying to push those watts, like in a sprint or you're going up a roller. Now that stiffness is consistent with the rest of the bike, especially the bottom bracket area. I'm not saying I do massive watts, but I haven't felt any flex in there. And typically a super stiff frame would lead to something that feels quite uncomfortable or rigid to ride. But I think what they've done here is they've complemented that with the ISO flow, allowing a little bit of compliance, as well as the bike coming tubeless setup, meaning you can run lower pressures. Next up is aerodynamics, which is probably the hardest thing to talk about. I'd love for my reviews to be grounded in reality and give you pure facts and data, but without a wind tunnel, it's impossible for me to do that. So I'm just going to give you some of my anecdotal evidence. This bike definitely feels like it holds its speed better around the 40km mark and above. I think two of the contributing factors to this is how comfortable it is to ride while in an aero position. Now hear me out, when you're riding on a bike, probably 90% of the aerodynamics of the bike, maybe even more, is actually to do more with your body position and the drag of your body and not the bike frame. The Madone has a surprisingly high stack height when compared to other bikes in its class. Now your initial reaction might be a high stack height probably means worse aerodynamics, but what I found for myself personally was that it was a lot easier to hold my aero position for longer. I think you'll see this in the pro peloton as well as some other riders shifting away from the fully slammed look of the bike and adding a little bit of spaces in there just to make sure that their optimal aero position is as comfortable to hold as possible. So yes, I agree that on paper this bike might not be the fastest at 45 kilometers an hour, but I think it's a very comfortable bike to ride at fast speeds. Because of the way that the Gen 8 was marketed as being as light and as Emonda and as fast as the previous Madone, I think it is unavoidable that it would draw comparisons to the Emonda, and I think this is a bit unfair on the new Madone. Without stripping all the components of the frames and comparing the actual frame weight, it's impossible to tell if they are the same weight as each other. But what I will say is the complete build of the Madone is heavier than the Emonda. The Emonda was designed as an all-out climbing bike and it didn't have to make compromises for aerodynamics. For example, while the geometries are almost identical, the tubing is very different. In addition, the Emonda comes stocked with shallower wheels which are inherently lighter. By the way, I weighed the complete build of this bike, including the bottle cages, all the accessories for the Garmins and also the pedals, and it came in at 7.88 kilos. Whilst not particularly light, I think it is possible to make this bike very light if you're willing to spend a bit of money on other accessories and things around the bike such as lighter wheels. But I do think it'll be quite a bit harder to achieve a super light build like some people have done with their Emondas. This leaves me at a bit of a crossroads because I feel like the Emonda is just superior to the Madone in terms of weight, and that's completely fine because it's a climbing bike. But that means the advantage of the Madone over the Emonda lies in its aerodynamic benefit, which is unfortunately very, very hard to feel. People will quote stats such as 7 watts faster at 45 kilometers an hour and things like that. And to be frank with you, when I'm riding at 45 kilometers an hour, I don't even know what 7 watts feels like. On the flip side of that, I think a light bike is always going to feel much better because the acceleration is faster. When you're swinging the bike back and forth out of the saddle, it just feels really nimble, and it's just something that's a little bit more tangible. So where does this land us, and what is my final thoughts on the Trek Madone Gen 8? I think the Trek Madone Gen 8 is a really good example of a jack of all trades and master of none. It is not going to be the lightest bike in the peloton and is also not going to be the most aerodynamic. But you know what? That is okay because it does everything. And why isn't it important that you have a bike that does everything? Because most of the time when you go out and ride, you're not going to be on a perfectly flat TT circuit, nor are you going to be going and doing climbing for 4 hours. You're going to be riding on undulating terrain that changes and goes up and down. You have descents and climbs, and this bike addresses all those scenarios. The icing on top of the cake is how comfortable this bike is to ride, with the ISO flow and the tubeless wheels absorbing those road vibrations, making your ride quality better for longer periods of time. And this is backed up with a bit more of a comfortable bike geometry which allows you to ride in your aero positions for longer. These are things which can't be addressed by a stat sheet or in a wind tunnel or even by a set of scales. These are things that just lead to an inherently enjoyable ride. And I think at the end of the day, that is what the most important thing is about riding. Enjoying the bike you're on and enjoying the whole experience.
All right guys, that's gonna be it for the video. This is why I don't film it evening, because the sun is going down so fast and I feel so much pressure to get everything filmed and say everything I need to say. All right. Thanks for watching guys, really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.